Didn't let it count down all the way. I accidentally clicked it. All right. Hi, everybody. Please welcome Rob to the show. This is Rob Huff. He is a native California guy, and he's also a Gen Xer, and he's also a Gator in the Sub 2 community. So welcome, Rob. Thanks for coming on my show.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's still morning where I'm at. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, it's like super early where you are, right?
Oh, it's almost 9 o'clock, so I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So we have a few things to talk about. Being a Gen Xer. It was fun, but it was also rough.
Yeah, I mean, we're the last generation that grew up before Google.
Yeah, the BG period.
So, yes.
Like if you didn't know something, you just asked a friend.
Exactly.
And whatever they said, you took as gospel.
You went and figured it out. So
that's why we're used to believing like misinformation or whatever sometimes.
Well, it's funny because I mean, I haven't really thought much about being a Gen Xer. When I think about being a Gen Xer, it's more like when I was just going to college and get, the music that I liked and whatnot, and that's how I've related with my kids more about being a Gen Xer. But now there's the memes and the Gen Xer memes that are poking fun at us, and whatnot, and that kind of make me laugh. But there's that one that's going around where they're asking about like drinking out of a faucet, a hose. Why did you do that? And I mean, it's so true, and I can relate to that so much because growing up in Northern California, out in the country, we'd be outside and it'd be 100 degrees in the summertime, and we weren't necessarily not allowed inside, but it was like you'd have to run all the way around the other side of the house. So
it was safer back then.
Yeah.
I mean, our parents could lock us out of the house from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Exactly. Just come back in before the sun goes down. So that was about it.
When the street lights come on, that's when you need to be home.
Right? Oh man, where I live, we didn't have street lights. It was riding bicycles around 2-lane roads without center divides and whatnot, and just don't get hit by a car, coming around.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But no, it was fun. It was fun. And I've wanted to have my kids grow up in we had 2.5 acres growing up, and I've always wanted them to have that opportunity to kind of live out in the country to do that. We just never have, but it was a very different experience than growing up these days.
It gets dark, really super dark when you live out in the country like that, right?
No, but it was great. It was great. I have no regrets. So
yeah.
Anyway.
I saw this short the other day, and it was this Gen X woman around our age, and she was like, Gen X hotline, how can I help you? And the girl was like, she was like, I'm trying to work from home and my kids are like getting in my way. Like, what should I do? She's like, did you try locking them out of the house? She's like, no. And she's like, yeah, lock them out of the house. She's like, but what are they going to eat? Are there honeysuckles and blackberries in your neighborhood? I think so. Yeah, they'll eat that.
That is so funny. And again, that growing up, we had plenty of blackberries too. Yeah.
Yeah, honeysuckles. like kids today wouldn't even know what a honeysuckle is.
But yeah.
I grew up in a neighborhood with like Cape Cods. Yeah, so it was pretty cool.
No, and I don't honeysuckles because we had these little plants that you could blow on, and they'd like actually make a whistle. They were like almost like a kazoo, like they were but they were sweet tasting to the lips. You didn't eat them, but we would always look for those as we were tromping around.
Were they yellow?
No, they were purple. So yeah. Anyway, that was fun. Man, I hadn't thought about that in many years, I'll say.
Right. I was telling my daughter the other day, I said something and she was like, that hurts my feelings. I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, I'm so sorry. I said, well, listen, the stories that you heard about how Gen Xers grew up are real.
Yeah.
It's like if you're crying, your parents are like, I'll give you something to cry about. So, we're tough.
Right. No, that's it was very different growing up. I mean, I love my parents, and it was a different mentality back then, and I think they got their mentality from more of their parents, and maybe a little less strict than like what the greatest generation was, but yeah, it was like
Yeah, the baby boomers.
yeah,
The baby boomers are right before them, before us.
yeah,
Yeah, those are.
right. And then, but I'm talking like our grandparents, so yeah.
Mhm.
But I just the way I look at it, every generation, it kind of evolves. Parenthood has evolved,
Yes.
and
So
maybe
true.
at this point, it's evolved to the point where parents are more just friends, where there's not as much structure, which maybe evolved too far. But I mean, my perspective, just in parenthood, in that regard, is it's part coach, part mentor, but you're also part, the parent part, where there's the respect factor that's there too. But yeah, no, I'm thinking about being Gen X and growing up and being outside, and we had bikes that we rode everywhere as well. I
Yes.
mean,
Well, I mean, you could
we
only
weren't in
watch,
town though. I mean, we
cartoons
had
on
to ride
Saturday
a
mornings.
couple miles to get to our friend's house, in the
Oh,
backcountry roads and stuff. But I'll never forget. We were outside riding bikes once, and I think my parents and they had a couple friends over, and they were hanging out, working around the yard or something outside. And my sister, who was probably about 8 at the time, was riding her bike, and she was riding down a hill. We had a hill in our property, and she went over the handlebars, and I mean, was hurt, but not terribly. And we had it on I mean, one of the first video cameras I think my dad was recording, and you hear his friend kind of giggle, not happy that she was hurt, but it was kind of, the act was kind of funny. And he said, all part of the hazards of growing up. And
yeah, when we were little, if
those
one of us
hazards
got
aren't here
hurt,
anymore.
everybody laughed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? So,
And if you cried, you were a sissy, right?
exactly. But,
Yeah. And then there was a lot of latchkey kids growing up.
yeah.
When
Yeah.
the moms started working, because one income started to not be enough.
Well, yeah. And so we had, both my parents were teachers. And
Oh.
I was fortunate enough. My mom was a primary grade teacher about 30 miles away. So she was like the commuter. And then we lived in the town where my dad taught. He taught 8th grade. So we were lucky enough to either one get to just kind of hang out after school until he was done with his stuff, or, we rode the bus quite a bit. But I mean, back then there was no safety issues really.
Mhm.
Maybe in the safety in being in the bus itself, but like going home and hanging out. I had my sister too, so it was the two of us. She was a couple years younger than me, but
Okay, so it was just the two of you?
it was the two of us for a while. And I've got a younger brother that's 11 years younger than me, so
Oh,
we
me
weren't like
too.
we weren't in school at the same time. But yeah, that was a change to the family, but it was awesome. But then I went away to college when he was 6, so yeah,
Yeah, I have
it was a
a
different
sister
dynamic.
that's 11 years younger. So it
Yeah.
was like there's four of us all together, but there was three of us growing up at the same time. And
Mhm.
I'm like 11 years older than the youngest one. So when I remember things, she's not in a lot of that, a lot of my
Yeah,
childhood.
no, no, for sure. There's parts, and then, well, getting to this age, it's remembering back. Well, when was he there, and when was he? Had not been there yet. But
We can't even remember 5 minutes ago what we were
well, that's
thinking
my
about in the other room.
that's my saying is like, if somebody asks me if I remember something, it's like, I don't know. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. So good luck remembering something that far back. But
Yeah, the filing cabinets in our head are getting full,
yep, yeah, exactly, exactly. No, but it was awesome. It was when he was born, though. It was almost like he had 4 parents. And so we were close, but in a different kind of close, not like the sibling close from somebody that's in your contemporary as much.
Uh-huh.
But it was somebody to look out for, and then he looked up to us too, so it was kind of cool. But
Right.
yeah.
Cool. So, oh my gosh, you Remember that song from Quiet Riot? We're not going to take it.
Yes.
That's a Gen Xer theme ever, if there was one. Yeah, because
Hmm.
like the baby boomers, like, so I remember my grandparents saying, when they were kids, they were to be seen and not heard. They had to just like
I remember that saying, but that didn't necessarily apply in our family so much. Um,
for
but
your grandparents, I mean,
no,
like the
yeah,
prior
for
generation.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And then the baby boomers were like, okay, our parents ignored us, so we're going to pay attention to our kids. But they were most of the time paying the wrong attention.
No, exactly. Well, my parents were kind of paying a lot of attention. I think part of it had being a teacher. I don't know. There was a lot of structure growing up,
Yeah.
but yeah, but it's just I think back on it, and just the fact, just thinking, somewhat being glad that there wasn't social media, because I mean I think at least growing up for me, my parents paid a lot of attention, but then when we had a chance to be away from them is when you would kind of act out to a degree. I mean, we were good kids, but at the same time, there's no way. I mean, some of the stuff that just went on as kids that probably would be recorded today. I'm just glad it wasn't.
Yeah, there's no record. Isn't that
There's no
awesome?
record of it, and I'm not going to tell stories about it right now, that so that there will be a record. Too
Do
much.
you remember when the internet was turned on?
Um, to a degree, yes. I mean, I remember that sound in the telephone when you were dialing in. That
Oh
awful
God, that was
screeching,
so annoying.
yeah, that awful screeching noise that took a minute or so to actually connect you. But I remember what I remember most, and I don't know what the year was when like really the internet connected, and the first experiences I had with that. But what
I
I
think it
remember
was
most is email.
89.
Did you say 89?
I'm pretty sure it was
Yeah,
89 because I was 18
yeah. Yeah,
and
that'd be about right. But yeah, what I remember more than that though is like getting my first email account, and that was in
oh,
91. I mean, that was like when my freshman year of college. Uh, I went up I was up in Washington, and just getting that email account that like had my name on it. I thought that was
you
cool.
were a big shot, right?
Well, then yeah, and then getting
I
on,
mean, you felt like
sitting
a
in the
big shot, but
library,
you
the
got
school
it.
library, and just like Googling and like or seeing the news, like real time, and like
Mhm.
when the Gulf War started and stuff, everybody, I was like looking at like news. I didn't have to wait until 6 o'clock at night for it on TV.
Mhm.
You could get it online live. I just for some reason I remember that. Maybe I was nerdy that way,
Yeah.
but that ultimately I think led to my family, not so much now, but my parents, I'll say, and friends are like ask me how to do something, and I was just always been real quick to be able to Google stuff. And then so I'd give them answers out because I could find it faster. But it's funny. I mean, there's an app out there somewhere too that um, there are certain people that would ask me questions that it's just like, well, go Google it. You can get the answer. Go Google it. But the
Right.
app is like you type in their question and it records you doing it, and then I just send them the link to the app like when they're asking me to do something. So I'll type it in and then I'll send it back to them so they can.
Like, I'm not following you 100%. Like, give me an example.
Well, like, okay, so you ask me, what's the weather? What's the weather today in New York City? Like, it's something
Uh-huh.
that you could obviously easily Google yourself.
Right.
Where I would go to this app and it would like screen capture me typing it in Google. What's the weather in New York City?
Ah.
And it records that. And so I just send that back to them. It's like, come on, duh. This is it. Basically, it's a
So
joke.
they
It's
see you
it's
searching
being
for it on
facetious.
Google.
Like, here's how you do it yourself, right? I mean, it's simple
Right.
like that. So
Gotcha.
I don't know. I had fun with that for a little while, but some people just
Yeah.
don't want to go through the effort. They'd rather just ask the question to somebody that knows that can do it. I think so.
Was that other Gen Xers that you were mainly sending that to, or was it like,
No, it was my parents. Well, it would be I did it to my parents once and a couple of colleagues. Yeah, I guess they would have been Gen Xers.
yeah? Because I
But
mean, our kids taught us stuff.
oh my gosh, and that's like I'm going through that phase right now where I've always like my kids have come to me somewhat electronics geek and stuff. I used to buy all the latest Apple stuff, and
Mhm.
I have my MacBook Air and my iPhones and everything Apple or whatnot. And so I got my family into it, and so everybody would come to me like Dad, I can't get this to work, or son, I can't log into my email again today. And so I've been telling them, but now my youngest son, who's 14, like he's much quicker on this stuff now than I am. So I just say, hey, Adam, help grandma and grandpa out, because I mean, he jumps right into it now. So it's, yeah, I guess the apple didn't fall too far from the tree there, but it's just technology every 6 months, every year, keeps making advances. I think, and now I can relate to my parents to a degree in that at some point we all like, okay, this is as far as I want to progress right now. I'll keep my phone, instead of updating it get a new one every year, or, I'll wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I have 2 millennial kids and a Gen Z kid, and I can totally tell the difference.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a difference, but it's also in our own making, I think, to a degree. But yeah.
I remember. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, growing up, again, we did so much outside, and I played a bunch of different sports and whatnot. And these days, I sound like my parents, but
Right.
my youngest, I mean, he's watching YouTube videos, playing video games, and I mean, I did a share amount of video games too growing up, but there's not a lot of outside activity.
Yeah, we just had what, Nintendo and Atari.
Yep.
You remember that?
Atari started with Pong, and then Atari, and yeah. But so just the sophistication of the games too. I mean, I would totally be playing them probably today if I was their age, because it's so immersive now too.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe how far technology has come, how fast. Yeah. I remember when I had 2 sisters in the Air Force, and one of them, and this was like somewhere between 17 to 20 years ago, something like that. And one of the girls was on the computer, and they're like, "Oh, Aunt Natira says hi." And I'm like, "How are you talking to Aunt Natira? Like she's down in Texas." And they're like, "Oh, MySpace." I'm like, "Your space? What's your space?" So then they showed me MySpace, and I was like, "Oh, wow." And then, I was like all into MySpace, decorating your page and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then what, a few years later, my oldest was like, "Mom, you need to get off of MySpace. Like nobody's on there anymore. You need to get on Facebook." I was like, "What's Facebook?"
Yeah, I held out on MySpace, but then Facebook, and I got into Facebook because I was in marketing and communications, and my new boss at the time, said we need to be on Facebook, as a business,
Yeah.
and as people, kind of promoting our brand and whatever. So that's when I got into Facebook, and that was like I was the first one. My wife at the time like wasn't interested, but then once like a year or two later, once she got into it, then it was on. So
What hooked me with the MySpace and the Facebook, the main thing that hooked me was that I could talk to people.
yeah.
I could keep in touch with family that wasn't close by, and friends and all. That's what I loved about it.
That's to this day, even like we do it on Instagram now, but the grandparents, my parents that are not necessarily nearby, you post pictures and stuff, and they see pictures of the grandkids, and so that's main way of keeping up with family in that regard. And back in the day when first Facebook, that's became friends with people that you knew in high school, but you weren't necessarily friends in high school. And it was just very interesting to reconnect or connect with people in that way.
Yeah. It's like, I remember Facebook in its heyday, and it's kind of not as popular anymore, at least in America. Like I know a lot of people are just like I have actually all my kids, they're like, "I'm hardly ever on Facebook." One of them's never on Facebook. Like,
yeah, mine aren't on Facebook. Yeah,
they're like anti-Facebook now.
The only time that they're on Facebook is if I send them something to look at on Facebook.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, how was raising your children different from how you were raised?
Like I kind of alluded to earlier, and that the way I was raised was more strict, I think, and it was not the be seen, not heard, but it was my dad's way or the highway, pretty much, right? And you didn't have a choice. If you were
Yeah.
asked to do something, it really wasn't a question. It was, and it wasn't at my leisure. It was now.
Right.
And and it was interesting because when I got married, my wife grew up in a different experience where it was more open's not the right word, but it was more allowing the children to make their choices and learn from their mistakes, where I came up with like more in line, more in terms of telling how to do things so they don't make the same mistakes. So I think
Right.
for me, and actually that was a eye-opening experience or eye-opening perspective. I didn't really think of that way. I didn't agree with letting them find their way so much and being more as a passive participant, but it really wasn't passive because and so we landed someplace in the middle. And I mean, in my perspective, and by far, I'm not saying by far I'm a fantastic parent in all regards, but it's kind of a combination. I think today, for at least for me, it's a combination of those where instead of I was always apt to say no right away first, and then like they'd have to talk me into something. Is trying to just like hear their perspective and kind of be more like a coach or a mentor kind of thing, as well as just telling them this is how you should do it and why. But let them make some mistakes, as long as they're not ones that will hurt them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that because, like, as I was growing up, I don't feel like I ever thought like a child, but I was taking mental notes of like, oh, okay, when I'm a parent, I am not going to do that.
Exactly.
Like,
No, exactly. That's
same
thing. Yeah, same thing.
And that's how I thought. And I was like, oh, okay, when I'm a parent, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. Right. And they weren't crazy things or like things that a child would make notes of. So like when I became a parent, I remember with my oldest one, we only do what we've been taught. We don't know any other way, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going to spank her and being like, "Oh gosh, I can't do this," right? But you can't just let them run wild either. So
Exactly.
I took these like child behavior management classes, which basically was early childhood development is what they were teaching basically. So that's kind of like how I raised my kids, and it was like giving them two acceptable things to choose from so that no matter what they chose, it was going to be acceptable, but they also feel like they have control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I've told this story a million times. My daughter was continuously leaving her bike outside. So I told her, I'm like, Ashton, you need to bring your bike inside because when you leave it outside, you're showing me that you can't ride it tomorrow if you don't put it away. Is that what you want to show me? No. Then what do you need to do? It's asking questions, just like the Sandler way,
Man, I could have used some of that. I could have used some of that with them growing up, but
no. The funny thing is that works with adults too.
It does, very much so.
Yeah, when I worked in the office, I used to use that stuff all the time. Oh, it works so well.
But, yeah. Yeah, it is different. I mean, I can remember sometimes like you bring up spanking, and that was, growing up, I can only remember a couple of maybe 3 times where I was ever spanked, right? And because I know typically we would do what we were told, by and large, but I felt like with children when we became parents, that was like spanking is off the table. Rightly so. Physical abuse, but there was like at times the children when they were really ornery, they're like, well, what are you going to do about it if I say? Well, my oldest son, who's the sweetest,
I think he said that.
Well, he's 23 now, and he's the sweetest human being you would ever meet. He has not a mean bone in his body. But growing up when he was little, I'd ask him to do something, and his response would be, "What if I say no?" Hey, what if I say no?
I probably would have been like snarky, but like still using my parenting skills at the same time. I would have been like, "Oh, I get to choose this one." How?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Not go out for a whole week, or I can take your video game system away. Oh, I get to choose.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, he put it back like that, but exactly. But then I think about how we're talking about parenting and putting things as a question back to them. But that's what we would do. It's like, okay, if you say no, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen. Which would you like to have happen? You know,
Right?
and
Yeah.
then like, all right. But I mean, he said that until he was about 6. I mean, so that was like one of his. I don't know where he picked it up, but that was just like one of his first things where he realized, like, I think in saying no, then it would be a different outcome. And so he was like testing the waters. What if I say no?
Yeah. Well, that's kids' jobs, right? To test the waters because they're learning how to. I always thought it was completely unfair when people expect children or they act surprised when kids like step out of line or do something unconventional. And I'm like, guys, they're kids. They're still learning how to be in this world. It's our job to teach them, like can't.
Yeah. And I think, and I mean, this is not, I don't think I'm saying anything new or revelationary, but kids, they do want boundaries to a degree, or to know, at least to know what they are. And then I think it's our job as parents to provide them boundaries, and however you want to raise them, how tight they are or how loose they are. But they'll keep pushing until they get to those. I think it's just human nature. So
right. Yeah. So let's see. How about work and money? Did I mean, I guess our generation, both parents had to work.
Yeah, both. I mean, it was like, you grow up, you go to school, you get a safe, secure job, and you have 2.5 kids, 2.5 kids. And, and that's where things have been different for me and how I interact with my children in that way. But just work and money, it was always expected to go get a job, and not so much like what you and I are, the path that we're on right now. And in that, there's other opportunities out there than just getting that job, and because they're not secure, as we all know, anymore. And, being an entrepreneur and trying to build something on your own, within a community, but building something where you have a little more freedom, and maybe control over it. But growing up, it was, get that job and work in it for 30, 40 years and retire with a pension.
Yeah. And that's like an issue now too. Pensions. Like a lot of people have lost money in the stock market and stuff. But
yeah. I mean, the company I worked for the first 10 years of my career, it was an aerospace and defense company. So all that stuff, I mean, it was set up by the government, and there was a pension that I would be taking right now. But about 5 years after I left that company, they offered to buy out the pension. I mean, I'd have more money now. And now I think, keeping it would have been probably better. But at the time, they bought out my pension, and we used it for a down payment on a home. And so, because they realized that they were not going to have that money there for everybody, once we all hit. So, no, but
that's kind of like the old way. The old way was to work a job. I feel like our parents a lot, the baby boomers would get a job, keep it their whole lives, feed into a pension. Then when they retired, they'd have that pension. But, like even if you did have a pension, I feel like by the time you were ready to retire, it's not going to be enough.
No, exactly. Yeah. I agree. And, I mean, just talking about work and money broadly, I mean, I think one of the biggest glaring omissions that there is in our society, and I can only speak for the US, but just learning financial literacy. We didn't get any of that. I mean, you learn how to take out credit cards, but you don't really learn the bigger picture and how to use money as a tool more than just than as a means to to eat and put a roof over your head.
Robert Kiyosaki,
exactly. I was going to say, I mean, that's
he says that all the time. Yeah. They don't teach anything about money in school, and that's on purpose, or there's a reason for that, or whatever.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's where so I'm trying to impart that wisdom on my children too. I mean, they're not as they're not there yet, but and my like I said, my oldest son, who's 23, and he's slowly weaning himself off of mom and dad in terms of like he so we're not to get the his mom and I are divorced, and she moved out of state. So when he graduated from college, he was living with me, and he's like, okay, I'm ready to move out, but I'm going to move up and live in the adjoining unit where my mom is. So he took that step, and now he's getting ready to move out on his own, and he's getting really excited about that now too. So
so you had custody basically.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I've had custody of them, but it's joint custody. Obviously, she doesn't see him as much because she's out of state, but now she does, and everything works out for a reason, I think. So the years have now passed, and I think that as the kids get older and are more understanding of what how the relationship evolved, it's been a pretty healthy thing, as healthy as it can be for two separate families now. But no, he's like, I remember I was so stressed in high school about figuring out what I want to do, getting into the college I wanted to get into, so that I could get a degree of some sort, so that I could get the job, so that I could then get married, and whatever, that following that structured approach.
Right. All the things that we were told we needed to do.
Yeah, I so wish that I would have been, and I love my parents, but that was kind of like there was not really a choice
right
in that path. And so one thing that I really want my children to go to college too. They don't have to go to a 4-year school like I did, and thankfully they didn't all do that.
Do you though? Because I keep hearing that it's just not what it was.
No, I don't think you do, and that's why I've learned more in things, in following some of these the paths that we're taking. I mean, with Pace Morby and with other people, learn more applicable skills online or through non-traditional learning, I think, than I ever did.
Because I mean, when we were younger, we were told if we went to college, we were pretty much guaranteed a really good job. I know that's what it was for baby boomers.
You get the piece of paper,
because not everybody got to go to college. You could only go to college if you could afford it. There was no student loan stuff in play. So if you went to college, you were guaranteed a really good.
And I mean, I think to a degree, I mean, for me, me and my personality. And so I grew up in Northern California. I went to school up in Seattle, to college up in Seattle. So I was, a 12-hour drive back home. So it's not, impossible to get back home pretty quickly, 2-hour flight, but it was just far enough away, but it was far enough away where I had some independence. And for me, college was mostly, was the social part of it where I grew the most. Right. And so that was really beneficial for me. But yeah, back then it was like getting that piece of paper saying that you graduated from a college was very helpful. And now I think to this day still, it's more competitive, but if you get that piece of paper, it's still very helpful getting a traditional.
The only thing is, I mean, it is, but most kids don't get jobs in the field of their study.
No, that's absolutely true.
But just saying you graduated and having that graduation certificate just says that you stick with things to the end. I mean, I don't know if that's worth $40,000 to $100,000 for.
No, exactly, and that's what I would rather. And this is what I've told my sons. I have a stepdaughter as well, but what I've told them is, find your passion and follow that. And if it takes you to a 4-year school, then great. If it takes you somewhere else, then go, follow that and learn everything you can about what that is, and learn how to monetize it. And so I don't, like my oldest son, he's a photographer. That was his major and that was his passion, but he's still, 23, he's trying to figure out, do I really want to dive into that wholeheartedly and make that my career? Cause then maybe I won't like it anymore. I mean, it's,
what he can do is maybe start doing it on the side, and then
that's what he's doing.
Enough money.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what he's doing. He has a job, and he's been going around on the side. He goes into coffee shops and or little establishments where he sees, you go into Starbucks or you go into a coffee shop and you see people have their portfolios, their paintings, or sometimes it's print photography. He'll talk to them and say, hey, do you want to look at my portfolio? And so he hasn't landed any of those yet, but I mean, he's starting, like, what can I do, on the side that where I can still go after my passion and see if it's something I really want to do that I can make money at. So
there's some websites and stuff where you put, pictures that you've taken if you're a photographer.
No, there are.
You can use them and you'll get royalties or something.
Yeah, there are. And he's explored some of that too.
Cool.
But he hasn't set something up officially. He was going, and I'm drawing a blank, but there was that website. He still puts his pictures there. I can't remember. It's a common one. Well, from 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
But where I used to put my better pictures up there, not to sell, but just you can put large file sizes, and I'm drawing a blank, but there's a part of that site where you can go from being you can have a professional account. And so he's been considering that too, where people, if they want to download your stuff, then they have to pay some money. But he's not interested in that at the moment. He's just enjoying what he's doing and trying to find himself, basically. So
yeah, sometimes it takes a long time.
So,
yeah, sometimes it takes forever to really.
Well, I mean, I joke about it, but I'm not 100% joking about it. But I'm, my age now, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. And
right, jokingly serious, right?
Right, yeah, because I mean, I've been in my career for almost 30 years now, and it's like it's not what I'm ultimately passionate about. I'm good at it. But,
so you worked in the what was it, aerospace?
Aerospace. I worked for an aerospace and defense company, but it was in their corporate communications department. My dad was an English major, became a teacher, and I wanted to do anything but be an English major and didn't want to be a teacher. But the next best, easiest thing for me was a communications major, because you still did writing, but you're writing. Ultimately, I wanted to be like a journalist and get stuff published. But then I found out you make more money, kind of not on purpose, but you make more money working at a Fortune 500 company, getting paid to write. Whether it's their internal newsletter or their
and being a freelancer, right?
Yeah. So I ended up taking a career path in communications and marketing.
Oh, wow.
Has less writing and I'm more in the digital space, where I'm taking what people are writing and, setting up the emails to send out, or the websites, making what the other writers and the designers, making them a reality. Basically.
So you said aerospace, and I was like, oh, my grandfather retired from NASA.
Yeah. So my grandfather was an aerospace engineer, and so is my uncle, the aerospace engineer. One of them worked at a company called Aerojet, that's where I ended up working. I didn't realize my grandpa worked there until I actually got hired.
Oh, wow. They didn't share a lot of information, did they?
No. And so, but when I went to college, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, but I got weeded out of that because my grades in like chemistry and and all of the sciences weren't good enough.
But grades isn't always the best thing, though. I mean, they're finding that out. Some people just don't do well testing, but they got it all up here and then some. Yeah,
I bet. I mean,
the same system for a whole bunch of different types of people.
Yeah, no, I found out though. I was more in line with my dad and not my uncle and grandpa, where they were more the engineer type and really math and science focused, where I'm more on the creative writing side of things. So ultimately though, I got the best of both worlds, because I was an aerospace engineer, but I went and worked for a company and wrote about it. So I got to experience a lot of the cool stuff. I just wasn't designing about it. I was letting the world know about it. So
right,
that was fun. That was really fun. So
yeah, my grandfather would tell me things like, I remember him telling me one day you're going to be walking around with a computer in your pocket, and I was like, get out of here. How's that going to work? That's a pretty big pockets, right?
Yeah.
And then the BlackBerry came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what he was talking about. And he was like, you won't even have to be home to get a phone call. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I mean that's what smartphones are. Little computers. I mean, and they cost as much as computers do now too. So
He's telling me this when I was like 19, and there weren't really any cell phones yet. We were there. If you had a cell phone, you were a doctor or a lawyer, and it was like a brick.
yeah.
You remember
Well, are
that?
we gonna be around when those like become like embedded in us, like little
Uh,
microchips? And yeah,
I wonder.
I
I
mean,
wonder how.
I don't think it's that far off, but we'll see.
So, it's like that's not the scary thing. The scary thing is who's going to have access and control of that.
Well,
That's the
that's
scary.
always the scary thing, right? I mean, a lot of technology gets born out of what we are creating for war, but
Mhm.
being applied, in non-wartime, applications, and but then yeah, who has ultimate control of this stuff? And
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
with
Velcro
it's a
was
data
invented
world. Yeah,
from NASA from keeping stuff from flying all over the
yeah,
place.
no, for sure. No, I mean, and that's just it, though, is especially in this world of information, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. I'm not the expert in this stuff, so I don't want to go too deep in this. But yeah, ultimately, who controls the information eventually, is the one that's in power. So
Right. And I mean, I feel like people in power kind of I feel like in general all people are good, but it's like if people are in power for too long, the temptation starts to creep in, and if the temptation is there for just way too long, I feel like it's just not a good combination. You know what I mean?
yeah, I know what you mean, and I don't even know that if it's an individual like person that's in power too long, but just a
Yeah,
certain way of
groups.
thinking, yeah, a certain way of thinking, and there's always bad apples and people trying to manipulate things. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of
I
how do we?
believe in balance.
Yeah,
Everything needs to be balanced. You can't appreciate the good without having the bad, but you don't want too much of one or the other. It's got to be balanced.
exactly.
You know? So, how about the music when we were growing up? You
Uh,
remember MTV?
oh, I do. I remember when it first came out. I'm actually, yeah, watching it at home and in the living room, and when MTV actually played music first. Um,
Right.
yeah,
And
uh,
it was like when that was back when cable TV was brand new and we didn't have remotes yet. They were actually we had remotes, but they were connected to a box with a big long cord, and there
yep.
was a dial on the remote.
No, I remember that well. Yeah. Um,
If you wanted to watch something, you had to watch it at the time that it aired.
yeah, yeah. Do you remember when they first came out with like the DVR, where you could record things?
Oh
No,
yeah.
that was crazy. And now, I mean, to this day, I mean, to this day, my dad records all the episodes he can of The Big Bang Theory, like in his DVR, and because he loves that show. Like, Dad, you don't have to record it. You can just search it, and it's all there. You can watch it anytime you want. Oh, but
It's
just in
hard
case
for
it's
them
not
to
there, I
move
want to make
from
sure I
one
have
thing to
all
the next.
182 episodes. I'm like, my God,
Right.
yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, but yeah, when MTV first came out, and watching that, um and thinking back, and now they have shows about when MTV first came out, and I was just actually watching one on like hair bands, which
80s hair bands.
80s
Oh
hair
yeah.
bands, and then ultimately the series was about 80s hair bands, but my sweet spot was in when I went to college and grunge music, because I was up in Seattle when it came out. But in that 80s hairs band series, they talked about when Nirvana came out with Smells Like Teen Spirit. That was like immediately the end of 80s hair bands for the by
Oh yeah. That's so
um,
sad.
but yeah, no, I remember back then. I mean, I was a Def Leppard fan,
Mhm.
by and large, and yeah,
Cinderella,
yep,
White Snake.
uh-huh.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so but it was fun. My older cousin was so into all that, but he was like into Ozzy, but he was a little more metal, Ozzy Osbourne. Black
Yeah,
Sabbath.
Ozzy was gross. I feel like in general he was more for the guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he would like bite heads off of bats or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I remember that. No, my cousin
Who
though
liked that? I
played
don't
the bass
understand.
guitar, so he was really into. I mean, he was in a band and not. I mean, he just played locally up here, but yeah, it was a very different time. But yeah, MTV, gosh, that was something totally new, and you got to actually see you got to see the bands and not just hear them. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you go to concerts?
You know what? No, I didn't go to a concert until like the summer I graduated from high school. And I was actually thinking about this before we got on the call here. But the first concert, so I basically, by and large, growing up, I liked all kind of music, mostly pop. Because my growing up, my dad was a big like he was in the Creedence Clearwater Revival, and then he was like he loved like the 50s and 60s music, and so he was listening to that and very mainstream pop music. But seeing the bands, on MTV, I was, so if it was pop music, that was great. But then so it was like Madonna, it was Prince,
Oh, Prince. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I loved it. And him in that movie, Purple Rain.
yeah.
And
So
I still like to put that album on, or not put the album on. That's the Gen X saying right there.
right.
Pull it up on
The
YouTube.
albums are coming back. My kids, my two oldest have turntables. And
oh wow. But
and
that is that for
buy
DJing,
vinyl.
or is that like for literally playing records?
They actually listen to it and they buy vinyls, and they're not scratching it or anything like that. It doesn't get into hip hop or rap that way, but no. And now vinyls, like you can buy them in different colors, and there's like all this different. And
so they're still selling those?
Yeah, it's they're actually, there is a niche business and it's growing. Not just buying our old cast off scratched up vinyls, but
they're making new ones.
I think, and I didn't know this, but like Taylor Swift has her albums out in vinyl too, and like I said, there's different colors, and I don't know what differentiates the colors, or if it's like the first month you get a blue one, the second month they open up another. I mean, just to sell more. I don't know how it works these days, but
yeah, I mean,
no, but they actually listen to
the record player.
They listen to it on the album.
I mean, your kids have them, but I mean, like,
yeah,
how many? It's not a lot of people have a record player to play it. It's
probably not. But yeah. Well, my uncle, the aerospace engineer, he also, his first job, he went to Chico State. Took him 9 years to graduate, and he always like jokes about that because he said I was making too much money. But back in the day, he would repair.
He had too many frat parties.
Well, that too. But he had a good time, but he would repair electronics. I mean, that's how he got into aerospace and as an engineer. But he grew up, he just understands electronics in a way that 99% of us don't. But he would repair records, and so actually, when I bought my son his album or his turntable, I bought him speakers and the amplifier, everything, but it was a reconditioned one, an older one that my uncle repaired for him. And the older ones are still, the quality of the older ones are better than the new stuff they put out these days. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of
quality of everything a while ago is better.
Yeah. Probably.
But what was that movie of our time with Val Kilmer, where the one guy, they were in college, and the one guy had been going to that school for so many years.
I don't remember Val Kilmer. I remember there was Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
You know which one I'm talking about? And they had a science project, and they invented something. The college had these kids, and Val Kilmer was one of them, and he was super smart. He had them working on a science project that they were actually going to sell to, like,
I don't remember that at all. Now you're going to have me. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, Google that. I was just picking up my phone.
Google that. Yeah.
College movie with Val Kilmer. Say that.
Oh, anyway.
If you haven't seen it, oh my gosh, you got to see it.
It helps. Real Genius?
I think might be it.
Yeah, he looks really young in this. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I have never seen it.
Yeah, because he was a genius.
Val Kilmer plays Chris Knight, a senior in a fictional Pacific Tech University where he's considered one of the smartest people in the world.
Yes. They had him working on this laser thing, and then when he found out they were gonna, spoiler alert, guys, when they found out they were gonna use it as a weapon, and he like destroyed it or
Oh
something.
my gosh. Yeah. No, I
But it
can't
was
believe I missed
definitely a
that.
college thing. And there
Yeah.
was this one guy that just showed up randomly, and they're like, "Oh, he's been going here for 12 years or something." Just reminded me of the story you were telling with your uncle or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, no, but yeah, music back then is just different. And then like I said though, going to college, and it just happened to be the time when grunge just like literally hit that summer. But
Mm.
that changed a lot for me. I mean, just my musical taste. But again, that music was something that my parents did not particularly care for, and it was more of a statement for me moving out of the house, going to college, and breaking away more from the pop music at the time. That was
It was
more,
us pushing back, you
yeah,
think?
there was a lot of, well, that music in general is a bit of pushing back. And
So when you say grunge, like,
I talking Nirvana, Pearl Jam,
oh,
Soundgarden. There's like
okay.
Mudhoney. I mean, there's all kinds of, and then, but I mean, that time it wasn't super say grunge, but that was also for me is Metallica, where Metallica became more mainstream. Where like there's somewhere I've seen it on Instagram multiple times, but there was like a 6-week period where you had Nirvana's album hit the big album, the Nevermind, and Pearl Jam album hit. Red Hot Chili Peppers had the album that made them big hit. Rage Against the Machine had their
Rage
album
Against the
hit.
Machine, I
Metallica's
love.
Black album hit. I mean, Soundgarden, I think. I mean, there was like a dozen albums that were very impressionistic on me that came out when I was 18 years old, and that kind of like kicked everything off for me. But in terms of my musical taste, and my youngest son he's like, Dad, do we have to listen to grunge again in the car? Like in the car. That's like, I still to this day I have it a lot. So lately we've been sharing stuff, and I let him take control. But yeah, my sons are, again, they could not be more different than me in some ways, and that's another one. Their musical tastes are much more mellower than mine.
Yeah, I know. I used to play I would like turn the music up loud in the car, and the kids would be like, "Mom, you're hurting my ears." And I'm like, and here I thought I was going to be the cool parent,
Yeah, right. It's like,
jamming
you're so
out.
old. Why is it so loud? Like, you have to feel it. You can't just listen to it. Yeah, but
Oh man.
yeah, anyway. But no,
So
those are
what
all.
was
I
your
mean,
first concert?
oh, so yeah, my first concert that was the end of my senior year was country music, and that was the
Oh,
only music I really didn't care for was country. But I had a buddy of mine who, so we just graduated from high school, but his date stood him up, or like the day of the concert said, I can't go. So like, I got this extra concert ticket. You want to come? I'm like, sure. Where are we going? He's like, oh, let's go see. It's Alabama. Which, by the way, that was like my parents had a cassette tape of Alabama, and so that was like the only country band that I could say tolerated at the time, and actually kind of liked it. So that was fun. That was my first concert.
the
But then,
country wasn't too cool when we were little. It was our parents
yeah, well,
that
growing
really
up in
liked.
Northern California in the foothills, it's very conservative, and country was, I mean, the our high school had this big, FFA, Future Farmers of America group and whatnot. So it was a big thing growing up here, but
Oh,
not
nice.
not my cup of tea. But concert was really fun, and then by that fall, I think I went to my first Nirvana concert. So, and U2, I've seen U2 many times. U2 is one of my favorite bands as well. But
Oh yeah, you too.
yeah,
They're
back
good.
back then was like when they were like Joshua Tree had come out. It was Rattle and Hum had come out. Um, and I remember like my sophomore year of college, you'd have to go to Tower Records to buy the tickets when they would go on sale. And I'll never forget it. They weren't telling exactly when the tickets were going on sale until they were on sale. So everybody was listening to the radio up in Seattle, and literally, I mean, we heard it announced, but you looked outside and you can see the college students like on this running towards Tower Records to get their tickets. And I think it sold out in like 10 minutes. But
Oh
we
wow.
got tickets. We had a bunch of friends that were all looking out for them, and we got them, and it was fun. But
I got a guy on the inside.
yeah, right. Well, this was before like smartphones, but I think we had like you said, Blackberries or even like the flip phones back then. So we were in communication if somebody heard the announcement, and we'd buy the max allotted tickets. I think it was like 8 a shot. So we got our tickets.
Everybody pitched in.
Yep. Yep.
And my first concert was the Scorpions.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't really like pick that one, but everybody was going and they're like, hey, come on, go with us. I'll buy your ticket. And I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah. No, I remember too. One of my favorite concerts up back then was a festival. And I don't remember exactly the location, but there was like 2 bands, like 2 stages, right? There's a, and the primary stage, I think it had some grunge bands. One of them backed out, and I'm trying to remember the name. But
it was locally.
But Beastie Boys was also one of the headliners there, and I'm a big Beastie Boys fan. But, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but stage 2, they weren't even the headline band; they were like the second but they had just come out with a single, Korn, and they are a pretty hardcore band, metal band. Yeah. And I remember I was in flip flop. It was summertime. I was in flip flops and shorts, t-shirt, whatever. And the guy next to me, are they? He never heard of them. Like, are they kind of like Third Eye Blind? I'm like, no. And then and their big song kind of starts slow, but as soon as it's like one of those where everybody starts cheering, and the whole crowd pressed to the stage when they came on stage, and that started to build. It's called Blind, I think. And I literally got lifted off my feet in the throng of people, and my flip-flops came off, and I landed like 10 feet farther forward, and it was kind of scary actually, because we were all just like getting compressed, and then the people in the front just kind of like pushed back, so we all ended up going back, and I landed on top of my flip-flops.
That is hilarious.
Like, what are the odds of that? So anyway,
yeah,
that was an amazing concert, and it was pretty awesome.
I've been to like Metallica concerts and stuff like that, and Queensryche and stuff like that when I was a teenager. And I'll tell you, man, I was in the mosh pit like once or twice, and even then, I was just like, you could really see people get hurt, and I'm like, what is the point of moshing?
Yeah, no, I'm
like, oh my god, people are getting broken up bones and stuff.
I was at a concert.
I remember saying to my friends, do you see any girls in there? That's because it's stupid.
Yeah, right. We were at a concert once, and it was like it was indoors in a little theater, but it was, I think the band was Fish. It was kind of like a punk band. And one of our friends, we were like standing around the edge of the mosh pit, and one of our friends got in it and was like, banging around and stuff. And people were like, they were lifting people up, and like people jump on the stage and then jump off the stage and into the crowd of people, and they catch them.
Stage diving.
Yeah. Well, he did that. Well, when he did it, everybody parted. Nobody caught it.
See that?
And then he broke his nose, and we ended up taking him to the hospital. But
man.
Anyway, but he was, I think, being very obnoxious, and I think people were getting irritated with him. Bouncing around and stuff. And I think he probably, he wasn't a big guy, but he probably was under the influence of things. But yeah, that was one we ended up taking to the hospital. Back in the day, those were the good old days.
Our bodies, because nobody else was. So why were we going to be?
Yeah. No, that's one of those things that just doesn't age well.
Yeah.
Mosh pits.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Crazy. So let's see.
I gotta say, this is just very fun.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Great idea. Yeah.
It's like flashback. In order to understand where you're going, a lot of times you got to understand where you came from.
Exactly.
And this is good for, our kids to understand and stuff too. In future generations. I remember the first time I heard the term Generation X, and basically all it is a timestamp. It tells people what was going on in humanity when you were growing up, pretty much. So I remember the first time I heard the term Gen X, it was a Pepsi commercial. The
Yeah.
choice of a new generation. And then it said something about Gen X. And I was like, what does Gen X mean?
Yeah.
And then, that's when I learned it, but it didn't really become, a thing until we got older and started seeing the differences, between all
Mhm.
the generations. Um, and then so it's like, the quiet generation, our grandparents, our parents, baby boomers, basically. Us Gen Xers, then came the millennials. My ex-husband was my high school sweetheart. So, we were the ones going to those concerts with a group of our friends and all that kind of stuff. So I had a family really young. And so my kids are up there.
Mhm.
Been
Mhm.
an empty nester for a while. So, my oldest, I have two millennials and a Gen Z, and our son was turning on the computer or the TV all by himself, little toddler, turning on the computer, turn on the TV, starting to play video games. And we're like so shocked because, we didn't grow up with this stuff. So we're just like, oh, he couldn't even talk yet. He was doing
Yeah.
that before he could talk.
Yeah. No, that's my youngest is like that, was like that. And like using an iPad, right? That was their first experience. So like when I'll never forget this, when they started kindergarten, and they get access to computers, they're, he's going up and touching the computer screen, like thinking that it's going to
Like
work.
it's going to do
iPad,
something like it's a touch
like the
screen.
iPad. Yeah. And so it's like, I never thought of that before that happened. It's like, they're like regressing when they go to school because they're, using your standard computers versus, these iPads where you just swipe things around and make it work. But no, but they pick it up real quick. So,
Yeah.
but they didn't, they don't learn how, like, I think typing class is still like in high school. Like I took my typing course in high school. I was like for a typewriter though, not for a computer per se.
I mean, yeah, I did a typing class. It really helps a lot because you don't have to look at
Yeah,
the,
I'm at the hunt and
keyboard
peck.
and it's
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
But yeah, my son's 26 now, working at Google.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he was a gamer, and I remember when he first showed me Bitcoin, he was like, "Hey mom, come here, I want to show you something." I'm like, "What's up, Jess?" He goes, "Have you ever heard of this thing called Bitcoin?" And I'm like, no, what's Bitcoin?" And he's like, "Well, it's this digital currency, right? I bought a Bitcoin for $150. And then 2 months later, it was worth 300 and I sold it and I could kick myself in the butt."
Yeah.
Fast forward to today. So now, of course, he remedied that and he's been a part of the Bitcoin community
Yeah.
since then. But fast forward to today. Um, I think a few years ago, back when Elon Musk bought 1 billion Bitcoin, you remember that?
Yeah.
That made the one Bitcoin shoot up. And at one point, it may have been more, but when I saw it literally online, it was worth 67,000 for
Wow.
one Bitcoin. You can buy portions of it,
Yeah.
but it went up that high. And I was just thinking, oh, I remember Justin telling me it was 150 and then it was 300. Like, but
That's
yeah,
crazy.
he
That is crazy.
it is, isn't it? And he was
Yeah.
a gamer, but I was the cool mom. Like I always, treated them like people, like our parents didn't do for us, right?
Yeah.
And so I would tell him, "Hey Justin, dinner's gonna be ready in like 15 minutes. Find a good stopping point in your game." Instead of just pulling the plug like our parents
Yeah.
would do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Well, yeah, but see, I struggle that because yeah, I do that with my kids too. But then they don't come to a good stopping point. They keep playing until you come back again, and then you have to say, "Okay, you're done."
Yeah. Oh, you have two choices. Find a good stopping point, or I can pull the plug in 15 minutes. You decide.
Yeah. Exactly. So anyway,
Yeah.
no, but just doesn't matter how you raise them or not. I mean, I've so much enjoyed being part of watching them grow and grow up, and as
Yeah.
they become their own people and as they do things that I realize that are just like me. Like my youngest son and I, we butt heads on occasion, and almost every single time after the fact, I'll go think about it. Oh my gosh, he's just being exactly like me.
Right.
I'm like
Isn't that funny? You
I'm
come full
looking in the mirror.
circle.
I'm looking in the mirror.
Everybody should have at least one kid because you get to see yourself from a third person point of view a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's been fun. It's been fun.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been like jumping around from topic to topic.
Yeah, we have. I think we've covered.
Thanks for keeping up with my ADHD, by the way.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been fun. It's been random. I mean, even I tried to think about the topics before the call, but even so, being in this is just bringing up a flood of memories growing up as a Gen Xer. So this has been
Yes.
Really,
yeah. I would love to talk about like where technology has gone. Like if we're actually at a little past an hour, I think. So yeah, I would love to talk about technology next time if you come on the show again.
No, that'd be fun. That'd be
There's
fun.
like-
We can do just a whole segment on that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, because we are the bridge generation. We bridge the gap between very little technology to, oh my gosh, the people that are born into this can't even do all of it.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone, just from our generation to today, we've gone from like being just a society of manufacturing physical things to, there's still the hardware stuff and the technology, but it's all about the data that we're getting from the technology. So, yeah.
Yeah. And now more than ever, we are, one of the things that the internet did was help us all connect and have access to more info. Well, first, it was all about having access to information worldwide. And then it kind of morphed into not only that, but adding into the fact of being able to connect with people all over the world. And then for those who really weren't getting on board with that, the shutdown from the pandemic really helped kick that in the butt and boost it up. Yep. Because when we were all shut down, we had to connect with each other on Zoom and stuff. And that's actually when our community leader Pace started sub 2 on the Zooms. Now they just go crazy with them.
It's crazy. Yeah. Now it's just nuts.
But, like, I'm so glad I have so many friends in California. Like if I was
good, I don't know.
We would have did this in person if I was closer. But
well, Californians would get such a bad rap, and nobody wants to live in California, or they say everybody's leaving California, or we don't want Californians moving to their states. But
well,
we're not all bad.
It's a beautiful place for sure. Well, I think it's just the cost of living.
You get what you pay for. That's part of it. Unfortunately, I'm not going into politics or anything, but yeah, it's there's things that could be better, but ultimately, if it was super cheap to live here, then there'd be a ton of, there'd be so many more people here. It wouldn't be very fun either. So, not to say there's still a lot of people here, but yeah.
So, like, where I'm not like super familiar with California. Like, where on California are you near?
So I'm near Sacramento. So I'm about 2 hours from northeast of San Francisco, and about an hour from Lake Tahoe, hour and a half from Lake Tahoe.
Okay, so like LA is like in the middle, right?
No, LA is far south. San Diego is like on the almost to the Mexican border. LA is a couple hours north of San Diego. It's about a 7-hour drive.
I remember looking up San Diego. You want to know why?
Why?
It's a Gen Xer reason. Because Three's Company was like my favorite.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I grew up with Jack Ritter and yeah.
Like I'm a yellow type personality. I'm motivated by fun. Yeah. So if like somebody's making me laugh, oh my god, that's all. I love laughing and connecting with people, and
Yeah, I'm about a 7-hour drive from LA, from the greater LA area.
North, right?
North, yes.
Gotcha.
And then it's but I'm still another 6-hour drive, 5-hour drive to the California-Oregon border.
Okay, so my daughter, I think I told you this before, not on this episode,
Yeah.
but you know, when we had a Zoom or whatever. My daughter lives in Oregon, like Portland or real close to it or something
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
And she's like, "Mom, you got to come over here and visit." And I'm like, "Yeah," I keep thinking I got to go over there and visit her
It's,
eventually.
I mean, that's ultimately where I'd like to be, is up in the Pacific Northwest, and that's Portland, Seattle area. It's a beautiful area.
Guy I went to school with lives in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll have to, you know, make my rounds
You'll have
when
to
I go over there.
make your way west and do the whole West Coast swing.
Yeah, I have to pop in, say hi to you, say hi to my daughter. The an episode that's airing tonight on the Gen X Files is she's from California too. She's from the Bay Area.
Oh,
She's in the Bay Area.
I'll have to log in and follow along.
Yeah, watch that. That's gonna be fun. You just I was thinking about doing another segment of the Gen X Files called like Ladies Night, where it's like it'll be like you know, 4 or 6 of us like drinking wine. And because I can't tell you how many times I've been hanging out with my girls and we had so much fun and laughed so hard and talked about the craziest stuff. And I have said so many times we should have been filming this because this is entertainment. Like I would watch this all the time.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
I want to have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, well, thank you so much for coming on my show. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, you are very welcome. This is my first foray into an interview online, and it was a great first start. So
Yeah,
thank you very much
agreed.
for having me.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to connect?
You can find me on Instagram, the Rob Huff. You can find me on YouTube at Rob Huff and Facebook at Rob Huff. YouTube channel's just getting started, so I don't think I have any videos on there yet, but I will be, you know, hosting some podcasts of my own shortly.
I better get an invite.
Yeah, you will get an invite, definitely, and including the in the front is not because I'm the one and only necessarily, but there is a famous Rob Huff that's a race car driver, and so I'm competing with his different social media accounts as well, trying to Rob Huff was taken. So, but it's definitely all the time on Twitter. I get at mentioned, they're thinking that I'm a race car driver all the time, like congratulating me on a race or something. It's kind of funny because
that's cool. At least it's not somebody with like a bad reputation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I'm not getting hate tweeted. It's more congratulatory tweets, but yeah, it's kind of funny. So,
or if a good-looking girl says, "Are you Rob Huff?" Why, yes, I am.
Yeah, so that's why, I mean, I think I'm still out there on Twitter, but I kind of shut that down in terms of interacting for the most part. But anyway,
is it still Twitter or is it X?
It's X, but it'll always be Twitter for this Gen X.
Like I feel like a lot of people are resisting and not changing that little symbol there.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I'm looking a whole nother topic, but like looking at, was it Thread? You know, the other one that was just put out there to compete against it, but we'll see. We'll see how, if it takes off.
Oh, Thread. I haven't even heard of that.
That I think that's a Meta company. It's a Facebook, Instagram company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so not a lot of people are a fan of Zuckerberg to begin with. So
no, but I think Musk has some detractors too on what he's doing with Twitter/X. So
yeah, well, you know, he had that name X.com back for a very long time. He's wanted to make that a thing.
Well, yeah, it ties into his SpaceX and all his X brand, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I just saw a documentary about him or something like that where I heard that.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah. He was born 10 days after me. We're only 10 days apart.
Well, there you go.
There's some really popular Gen Xers out there, big time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and this was really fun.
Thanks for stopping by. Thank you so much. All right. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Bye.